I was looking back on my review of Spike at Your Service, which honestly wasn't that long ago, but I don't think that review even got close to how much I hate this episode. I hate everything about it so much that I don't even think that I can cover everything I hate with just me. So I've got a guest here on my channel. Say hello, Pink Mist.
Heyo, glad to be here.
Fantastic, but before we get going, time for the intro. So, Spike at Your Service is one of those episodes that's notorious for being among the worst written episodes of MLP, along with episodes such as Mysterious Murderwell that completely ruin the credibility of this show's writing. As I've mentioned, I've done a review before, but this gives me a new chance at it. So, Pink, seeing as how you're a guest on my channel, why don't you do the synopsis of the episode?
Alrighty then. So the episode basically deals with Spike getting into trouble and attacked by Timberwolves, and then being saved by Applejack. Doing the logical thing someone would do in this situation, he tells her that he must serve her forever to repay his debt. AJ is unsure about this and repeatedly tries throughout the episode to make things even between them, so he doesn't feel the need to serve her. This whole conflict ends with a staged rescue, turning into an actual moment of victory for Spike when he saves Applejack and finally things are even between them. Now, the synopsis in itself doesn't seem too bad, but what happens in between is just cringeworthy.
Calling this episode cringeworthy is an understatement, really. There are many problems that cause this episode to be my least favourite of all time. First, let's talk about Spike's portrayal in this episode, the elephant, or rather dragon, in the room here. We've seen in previous episodes that Spike is often treated his work with a great amount of efficiency, and doesn't take it lightly, causing Twilight to dub him her #1 assistant. What happened to this Spike? I liked him. Almost. But in this episode, when he's helping Applejack, he manages to screw up every job he's given. Not very #1, is it?
Of course not. He's so clumsy and accident prone here that I wondered whether the writer had completely forgotten about his efficiency in the past. He can't even clean a kitchen without causing a mess. Heck, he can't even wash a dish for crying out loud. How does that happen to Spike of all characters? Now, I guess you can argue that having worked in a library his whole life, he's in a different environment now, but still, come on. He made baked treats just fine in Oswell if it ends well, and now he's a messy slob? Give me a break.
Freaking Applejack can do a better job than he can. She's not even got claws and opposable thumbs like he does. So it can't be a matter of physical limitations. The writers just got lazy and decided to ruin Spike's character for no other reason than it was funny. Well, let me tell you something. Spike wasn't funny in this episode. It just made me want to stop watching, which I did on my first viewing of the episode. Spike can be a good character. He's just handled very poorly in this episode. Now on to our next topic of discussion. All the points in this episode where things seem to just happen for convenience of the plot, like the hot air balloon. Why on earth did Spike just run into the post? Now you could say that this is all to do with his incompetence, which we already covered, but I refuse to believe this rope would have come loose off of that.
Well, maybe the knot wasn't too tight? Anyways, it was still stupid. You know what else is stupid? How Twilight didn't pay attention when Spike was talking to her. Now I know she can get absorbed in her reading, but what if something else had happened? If Spike had been asking her about burning part of a treehouse or running away or something like that, she would have just said yes? I mean, I know it sort of did give Spike the okay to be AJ's servant forever, but just no.
This whole situation does sort of fit into Twilight's character though, as we've always seen her as a book nerd. But for the convenience of the plot, as is everything else in this episode, she's completely absorbed by a simple book. And while I can appreciate the humour of the knocking of the inkwell joke to disturb her zen mode, Twilight has never acted this way in any other episode where we've seen her reading a book. Why have her be like this now? It sets up the rest of the episode, sure, but I'm sure there was some other way they could have gone about doing it. How about anything but this? But no. And let's give a thought to the section in the Everfree Forest, seeing as how Spike is a dragon. Don't you think they should have been able to breathe fire at the dragons to engulf them? Or at least sort of fight them? And don't give me that bullshit about the Equestria Games episode and him being too nervous to light the torch. Also, in that episode he tried to light it and he failed. And in this episode he just doesn't. He doesn't even try. It would have validated that argument at least a little bit if he had actually tried to do something, instead of just standing there looking like a total idiot like he usually does. The start of his completely ridiculous personality, running through the rest of the episode. A simple problem, but it grinds my gears nonetheless.
I do agree with that. They were Timberwolves after all, so breathing fire at them would have done fatal damage since they're made of wood. And the Equestria Games shouldn't even be mentioned to back this up because that's a whole season ahead, so none of that crap. Also, there's the whole situation with Applejack. She just happened to see the balloon with no pony in it. Makes sense, but for it to be Applejack of all ponies, especially to go rescue Spike, I kinda have to wonder how this episode would have played out if Spike had ended up serving Rarity or Rainbow Dash and was saved from a different situation. What do you think, Critic?
I do believe it was originally going to be Rarity filling the role of life debtor, and they would have addressed Rarity's misuse of Spike's trust, as they would have to bring up Spike's crush on Rarity and actually give a definitive answer on it. It's something I hope the show will deal with someday, along with issues like death and other such things. As for Rainbow Dash, it would be entirely understandable if it was her that saved Spike, seeing as how she would have been able to see the balloon more than others would, as she is the Pegasus, but I guess her element doesn't really conflict with the conflict, I suppose.
Rainbow did say herself that she would have loved Symphonia to do things for her, so I guess that would have gone against the intended plot. It had to be AJ, the hardworking farm pony, to decline an offer for help. It does go good with her character from what we've seen in the past, but the actual attempts she makes to make things even with Spike are not that smart, especially with staged rescue. Oh gosh, that looks so incredibly fake. All of it. And yet Spike found out it was a hoax from the lack of breath. Really? That's what gave it away? The Timberwolf puppet didn't even touch the ground for Pony's sake. Though I do admit, the actual rescue scene was pretty good. Except for the fact that a small pebble got caught in that beast's throat, but it was okay.
This is also something I have a problem with. Not a huge problem, but a problem nonetheless. This finale to the episode is completely anticlimactic and just stops the pacing of the episode to a near halt. It's not how I imagine a sequence like this should have played out, and if it was a matter of time, I'm sure they could have removed some scenes from the episode and still had it make sense, seeing as how most of the episode is useless fluff. And on that note, I guess it's time to conclude this review. Care to give any final words?
Sure thing. In conclusion, Spike at Your Service, while not my least favorite episode, is definitely in the bottom couple. There was very little I liked in this episode, and although one or two moments may have gotten a chuckle out of me, it wasn't enough to give it my huff of approval. Unfortunately, this turned out to be a pretty problematic episode, and it has gained a reputation as being one of the most hated episodes in the fandom.
Couldn't have said it any better myself. Anyway, I'm the Ponyville Critic.
And I'm Pink Mist.
Thanks for watching, every pony.